I'm standing here in front of a wall that is documenting a phenomenon in Latin America of black Christs and black Madonnas. The origin of these has both Old World and New World connotations. The black Christ begins in Guatemala early in the colonial period. A crucifix was carved in Spain, brought to Guatemala. It was put in a cathedral in a place called Esquipulas. Over the course of about a century, the skin color of the crucifix turned dark brown to black. The indigenous people, the indigenous Maya of the region, saw this as miraculous. They saw that Christ's skin was turning the color of their own, and they saw this as a sign of God's favor on them, and had a very close connection to this particular crucifix known as Our Lord of Esquipulas. So in more modern times, scientists have gone and looked at this crucifix and studied it and found that it turned black because of a certain kind of incense, copal, which is made from pine resin, that over a century it turned the skin dark. But the power of that story, in spite of scientific reasoning, is this idea that the indigenous people began to see God's favor in this new Christian religion. And so we start to see other areas of New Spain where we have appearances of these black Christs. In Mexico there's one, all the way up to Chimayo, New Mexico, where there's another one here in the United States. The other side of that are the black Madonnas. The black Madonnas actually go back, they're an old world tradition, most likely tied to the Moorish occupation of the Iberian Peninsula. The Moors brought over folk beliefs tied to ancient Egypt in a belief in the mother goddess of Isis. And so this dark-skinned mother goddess, somehow after the year 711, after the Moors' successful invasion of the Iberian Peninsula, we start to see black Madonnas showing up in various places in Spain. And when the Spanish come over to the New World, they bring this idea of black Madonnas. Now, when we look at the black Madonnas in Latin America today, we see two types. The first are the kind that are actually made to be dark-skinned. And we have an example here behind me of a black Madonna who was made to be dark-skinned. In fact, she resembles very much the style of what you would see in Spain. Interestingly, though, she was made in the Spanish East Indies. She was made in the Philippine Islands and then brought over in a galleon to Acapulco and then brought into Mexico City from there. The other kind, we have an example of this, very similar to Our Lord of Esquipulas, where exposure to this pine resin incense, copal, has turned her dark-skinned over decades. And there's an interesting folk tradition amongst many of the indigenous people of Latin America as the saints on their altars start to turn dark. They never clean them. They let the skin turn dark. The belief is that there is often more power tied to that. That's what I've seen from my own research, my own travels in Mexico and Guatemala, is that that there is not an effort made to necessarily clean them, but rather to allow them to take on a color that's more representative of the people who are venerating the image. On my left side here is a crucifix that I brought back with me from Guatemala. I guess it's been 24 years ago. I was doing an ethnographic documentary film in a highland Maya village, was filming a woman who had multiple crucifixes in her home, and she was lamenting to me as we were filming her that her children had converted to Protestantism, and they had told her that they were going to get rid of all these crucifixes in her home. I just casually mentioned, I said, do you want any of these to come to the United States for safekeeping? And she walked around the room and she talked to dozens of the crucifixes, spoke to them as if she was speaking to a friend. And two of them apparently told her they wanted to come to the United States, and that includes this version of Our Lord of Esquipulas, who she sent home with me. Tragically, the following year, Hurricane Mitch hit that village and destroyed it. And her home and all the crucifixes in it were destroyed, although she herself was able to survive.